Good morning, it's Mark Lanier with your video thought for the day. I was in the grocery store yesterday, yes, 6 feet away from everybody, don't worry. And I saw this when I checked out, Brain Games, dot to dot. Okay, look, I'm an old guy. These books I think are typically for children, but especially if they're learning to count. I love these things. I just love this whole idea of trying to look at something. It looks like it could be a bell, but really, is it a bell if it's got that many numbers and that many ways to connect the dot? Maybe that's a cowboy hat, but if so, it's a goofy looking one. I love those kinds of books because of a number of different reasons. I love to watch how a vision becomes complete. Well, that's wonderful for us in our video thought for the day because of Matthew chapter 12. In Matthew chapter 12, Jesus is talking to the local crowd, and he's telling them that from a good tree, good fruit comes, and we need to be careful about what we say, and we need to be careful about how we treat others, and we need to be careful about our language. And right on the heels of this, Matthew tells us about the Pharisees coming up to Jesus and saying, hey, we want a miracle. Why don't you show us a miracle? And it's like, they're going to put money in the machine and push a song, and the song's going to play. Jesus is some jukebox of performance for them. And Jesus says, that's not the way this works. You don't command God to do what you want, especially when you're just trying to figure out whether or not I, Jesus, have the authority to tell you how to behave. Jesus is just giving him godly principles on behavior. Now, the interesting thing to me is Jesus doesn't simply say, so you're not going to get a sign. You can either live godly, you can either follow me, you can either put your trust in me, or you can go to hell, literally. And there would have been merit in that, but Jesus doesn't say that. Instead, Jesus says, look, you want a sign? There's one sign you're going to get. You're going to get the sign of Jonah. Now, Jonah was an Old Testament prophet that most of us just know as the story we learned when we were young about Jonah getting swallowed by the whale or the big fish and then spit up 3 days later. But Jesus is talking about something deeper. Jesus is talking about connecting the dots. Jesus is talking about connecting the dots. Jesus is saying from the Old Testament prophetic statements, you will see that Jesus was who Jesus was. And that's still true for us today. We can understand not only from the sign of Jonah, but so many Old Testament prophecies. We can connect the dots. If Jesus is not the Old Testament Messiah, then we're waiting for Jesus to come because no one could come and fulfill those Old Testament promises any more fully than Jesus. Those promises not only include a death and a resurrection, but those promises also include this whole idea that Jesus has to die, that humanity needs the divine salvation because God is a just God and God has got to do something with the sin of humanity. And there's only one solution to that. And so we've been going through that in Sunday in our classes that I've been teaching on the internet. If you haven't tuned in or if you want to tune in, Sunday at 11, I'll be teaching live. And this week, I'm going to be teaching Connect the Dots from Jonah. And I think that you'll see that Jesus was giving them in his day and us today a very profound sign that he is who he is. And we should listen to what he says. So your video thought for the day is work on connecting the dots because God has laid out this magnificent plan for us. And if we'll walk in faith and trust, we'll find his deliverance from everything. I'll see you Sunday.